who you do business with says a lot about who you are as a person. Who you associate with says a lot about who you are as a person. So both of those are true statements. And um, I've done some a lot of work here to find out exactly what is what. When I started out on my journey to get boots, to find a boot that I could wear for a 12-hour shift, I spent a tremendous amount of money. And there's research out there, but you got to dig for it. And finally, I was like, you know what? I just need to find out for myself, because there's companies out there that are telling you they've got the toughest boot, and I'm telling you they don't. So based on the information that I have, the empirical evidence of tearing them down, and I'm not doing the other guy that cuts them in half with a bandsaw. I'm actually tearing them down so that I get a true answer as to what's going on. So I've got JK. This is Drew's. This is White's. I forget White's, Frank's, and then Westco on the bottom. So I've torn apart both boots, with the exception of the left one for the JK, because it's shot. So I won't be tearing that one down. When you look at the social media and you look at the marketing that is done on these Pacific Northwest boots with some of these companies, they would lead you to believe that their boot is the end-all, be-all, greatest boot out there, and that you're just stupid for not buying it. And that's exactly how they're portraying this. And then you've got companies out there that don't do a lot of advertising like that. They don't do the social media blasts. They do social media, but they don't cram it down your throat 24 hours a day, or seems like it anyway. Some of these boot companies, I think, I oftentimes wonder if they're not a marketing firm or a production studio that decided to get into boots. The first Pacific Northwest boot I bought was a Drew's that was made in Mexico, and that didn't fit well at all. It was awful. But I don't think it had the sizing right, and their sizing was at the time was a little obscure. But anyway, so I went to a Drew's McKay stitched, made in the United States boot, and that fit fairly well. I kind of liked it. And then I went to White's, and no, I'm sorry, I went to Westco, and I got a job master. And that was all right. So then I went to another Westco, which was a Highliner, and after that, I went to White's, and I got a smoke jumper, and I really liked that. And then I'd been seeing all the marketing and all that stuff, and oh my gosh, you've got to try this JK. It's the greatest boot in the world. It's exactly how they're presenting it. The toughest boot, America's toughest boot, the toughest wildland fire boot. I mean, they just go on and on. So I was like, you know what? Let's give it a shot. So I laid down the $600 and some odd and got the boots in, and they were not. They weren't good. I mean, they weren't very comfortable for one, and for two, the leather on it was. I'd gotten a Patriot from Frank's a little bit later. Leather on the Patriot was better than what I was getting on a premium $600 boot versus a $375, $400 boot. so I was, getting better leather on the Patriot than I was on JK's, their Fire Inlander, their top of the line boot. And then, I started seeing that other people were having some issues as well. Um, well, then I went and decided that I was going to go with Frank's. And one of the reasons I went with Frank's was because they weren't doing a lot of advertising. They weren't telling people that they had the toughest boot in the world. And that kind of turns me off anyway. It kind of makes me wary when someone's got to go out there and tell people they have the toughest boot in the world. Because for me anyway, it makes me think, well, do they really? But like I said, I fell for it with JK. And then I wasn't going to fall for it with Nick's. And not saying that Nick's is a bad boot, so don't take that. That's what I'm saying, because I have not worn their boots, so I do not know, and I'm not going to speak on them. But based on what other people are saying, they're more favorable than JK. I will tell you that, as far as what consumers are saying. But anyway, I went to Frank's and I got a commander, a fire commander, and I was fairly impressed. I thought it was a good boot. I thought it was on par with White's smoke jumper. A little stiffer, but it does have a thicker sole. So, and talking with them was fantastic. It was great. All the reviews that you get from them about Frank's, about White's, about Wesco, they're favorable. And I now had personal experience with dealing with various boot companies, boot manufacturers. So based on the experience that I had with JK, and that they just were very uncomfortable. And they don't seem to have as pronounced of an arch as what you're going to find in a White's or a Frank's boot. Wesco doesn't have much of an arch either compared to those two. But I started listening to or reading about, watching about the problems that people were having, and I was like, so what's going on here? So you have basically a company that is going out there and they do a lot of advertising. They tell people that, hey, I've got this great boot. They go out, they try it, they find that it's not, and then fortunately for me, that's what directed me to Frank's. And once I got with Frank's boots and I talked with Michelle, I talked with Ashton, I talked with Veronica, talked with Christian. I even talked with Frank here not too long ago. They're a down to earth group to deal with, and they listened to what my needs were, and they made some recommendations, and then we started working on boots, and I've not left. Now, does that mean that I would not buy a White's or that I would not buy a Wesco? No. If the situation presented itself to where Frank's could not meet my needs for whatever reason, then I would go to White's and then Wesco. Those are two solid companies. The White's and the Frank's are constructed very, very similarly. I mean, they're very close to the way that they're constructed. Frank's offers the Norwegian hand-rolled welt, just like White's does. Frank's does the McKay stitch, which White's, they might on some select models, but if you get like their smoke jumper, I can tell you for a fact it's not McKay stitched. You can get the hand-rolled welt, which is a great boot. I mean, I have no reservations about making recommendations. And here's where the rubber meets the road. If I make a recommendation to someone for a boot, I want them to have a good experience because now I'm putting my name on it. If you think for 1 minute, for 1 second, that I'm going to recommend JK to someone else, you have another thing coming. Because based on all of the problems that they've had, they have started scaling stuff back, and you just look at it and they just keep going down, 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 down flagging, I guess you could call it. They got rid of the McKay stitch, got rid of the slip sole. Now they're doing just a 360 construction with a single stitch. We're telling people that they didn't need the McKay stitch because they had a proprietary method that basically made that obsolete or made it unnecessary. No, that is a lie. I do not find anything in there whatsoever that could possibly be as durable as a McKay stitch inside that JK boot. No, not happening. So when you start seeing things, customers complaining and seeing things like this, or this, or this, I mean, that should send up some flags that, hey, something isn't right. Something's going on here. And as far as I'm concerned, and again, this is strictly my opinion, but it's based on tearing these boots down. I mean, here's the uppers. And here's all the pieces from these boots. Okay? I mean, that was a lot of work. But based on this, I do not feel that JK should have a place at the table with the rest of the manufacturers in the Pacific Northwest. And that's, you could say, well, that's your opinion. Yeah, it is. But it's based on evidence. It's based on work that I did, money that I spent. You know, you're talking the whites, $750. The Franks that I tore down were about $800. The Drews that I tore down were like $650. The West Coast, I think, were around $560, $570, and the JKs were $600. So, I mean, I've spent the money, I've done the work, I've seen with my own eyes, and felt and worked with my own hands to determine what's in these boots. And if you know, if a person were getting into the segment, the Pacific Northwest segment, you know, if they had to tear one of these down and saw how difficult it was to tear some down and how easy it was to tear some of the other ones down, and they're the same price, something isn't right. And people are being misled. And that irritates me. It just is. I mean, that's just my core value. I don't believe people should be taken advantage of. I don't believe people should be investing their hard-earned money into something that's not going to give them a return or a poor return. But I think that JK has put itself in a position to where they do not meet the standard. They just don't. And like I said, I've torn them apart. So I know firsthand they don't. But it is what it is. You know, you listen to not only me, but do your research and see what's out there. Go to the sites that don't remove the negative comments about JK. You know, there's a site on Facebook, a group. It's Pacific Northwest Boots Uncensored. You can't have. They will not remove comments on that. They won't. So you get to see. You can go to Reddit. Some of those, I guess, are removed, but others are not. And you start looking at this evidence. I mean, everybody else is not crazy, and that's what kills me. I get these guys that come out and attack me, say that I'm, biased, or the word they use is shill, for Franks. But I own whites. I own Wescos. I wear them. But JK, nah. And like I said, I wouldn't recommend them to anybody. I just wouldn't. Not as a Pacific Northwest boot. Not as a competitor to Whites or Westco or Franks. And I don't have a Nix, but based on what everybody else is saying, I wouldn't recommend them as an alternative to Nix either. I just wouldn't do it. I think that people need to look at all the evidence and look at all of the comments that are out there, what people are saying, and make a wise decision. Spend your money wisely. Spend your money so you get a return on it. You don't want to be stuck in frickin' RMA hell, waiting for a return authorization from JK or their customer service, because from what I'm reading, it's ugly. And they are scrambling now. They're getting out there. They're trying to reach out and trying to talk to people and so on and so forth. They did reach out to me a year later. But, I guess at least they did reach out. I mean, I can say that, but I wouldn't buy their product. Not for a minute. Not for a second. So, the point of this is, if you are going to purchase a product and then go out and wear that product and support that product, and that product causes another person to have a poor experience, multiplied over many times, and you continue to do that, what does that say? I mean, how are people going to view your recommendations or just, I mean, I guess, your decision making? You really need to think about that. There's a personality out there that I'll just say cuts the boots in half. And this guy has aligned himself with JK, and promotes their boots. And I mean, I personally don't take him seriously, because and then Whites is mixed up in there too. And Whites I have respect for. And that's the other thing. Does the company that you're doing business with, are they well respected? If they're not, you need to think about that too. It's just when you're buying boots, just think about it. Do your research. Make a good decision. And buy something that you can recommend to someone else. And that's where I'm at. That's why I deal with Franks. And I would deal with Whites and Westco. I wouldn't have any problem dealing with that. I've worn their boots. The Westco doesn't have as much of an arch, but from what I understand, you can have it built up. But I haven't checked into it, because right now, what's working for me is Franks. They know what I want. They have what I want. It's easy. I call them up. Hey, this is what I want. Can you build it for me? Yes. Or, no, how about this instead? I'm going to take the time. So, I've had nothing but a good experience with Franks. I mean, all the companies make mistakes, Franks included. Frank will own up to it. Frank will tell you that, hey, I've seen it. I've read it. I read it online. Hey, I had this issue. I'll fix it. I'll make it right. So with JK, it just seems like it's a long, drawn out process based on what others have done. I didn't send my back. I figured, and this is just how I am. You're gonna send that piece of shit to me, then I'm gonna keep it. And I'm going to let people know exactly what it is. Where someone is purposely going out there and doing this with intent so that they can create, I guess, a customer. And that's what I don't get. Why would you not want to create a customer for life instead of a one and done? And now JK has now moved to where they won't even do a resole now. It's now a rebuild. Well, you can only do so many rebuilds in that upper. You take one of these uppers, and especially if they don't do it right, and you put more holes in this upper, I mean, we have yet to see what those are going to look like because they just started that program. But they sure are doing a lot of maneuvering. I will say that. There's a lot of movement at JK right now. Trying to find their place. But it ain't at the table with the rest of the PNW manufacturers. I don't believe that for a second. I just don't. But y'all take it for what it's worth. I'll be glad to answer any questions that you may have about these boots that have been torn down. I can tell you on, the major manufacturers except for Nix. And again, that's not anything against Nix. I just haven't worn their products, so I'm not going to say anything about it. It just wouldn't be right. It just wouldn't feel right, number one. And number two, it wouldn't be right, for me to say they've got a bad product or they got a good product, because I flat don't know. But I can tell you that for recommending a boot that is durable, the two that are closest to one another are Franks and Whites. Westco has a machine that does their lasting. Their Highliner doesn't have a slip sole in it. It's a well-constructed boot, for what it is. And they aren't priced, ridiculously either. JK is pricing their boot and they're telling people they got the greatest boot on earth, and it's not even close. Not even close. Not even a little. So just keep that in mind. And when you make a recommendation, make sure it's something that you can recommend to someone else, and they're not going to have a bad experience. Because otherwise, you're doing a disservice to them. And then, what's your word? Are they going to look to you next time for any advice? I mean, they might, if you know them real well, but otherwise, probably not. So you have to be careful who you align yourself with. And like I said, I'm here to answer any questions. If you have any, hit me up.